I study philanthropy, both what causes people to behave generously and how generous acts are perceived by others, especially in light of the fact that oftentimes when people behave generously, they reap some benefits in return. And those benefits come in different forms. So we receive tax breaks when we give to charity. We earn reputational benefits for being perceived as a generous person, which is valued in our society. And we reap emotional benefits. It feels good to help others. And so this is kind of a contradiction because altruism, generosity in its purest form, is supposed to be selfless, and yet we benefit from it. In this paper, we look at what happens when people brag about or advertise their good deeds to others. We ask the question of whether and when bragging is effective, and the answer is really that it depends. On the one hand, bragging signals a selfish motive for behaving generously. It signals that perhaps the person behaved generously not because they're truly a good person who cares, but because they wanted to earn credit for being a generous person. And so in that sense, bragging shouldn't help your reputation if others realize that, or others perceive you as doing it for an ulterior motive. On the other hand, bragging is just marketing. It's providing information. If nobody knows that you did a good deed, then you don't get any credit at all. And so to the extent that bragging provides new information about your generous behavior, bragging should enhance your reputation as a generous person. So through a series of controlled experiments, we're able to tease apart or disentangle the different sorts of effects that bragging has on a person's reputation. And the key finding is that bragging only pays in situations for which bragging provides new news. So if a person's reputation is not so generous, bragging can help by providing information that the person has behaved generously. But if a person's reputation is already generous, then bragging doesn't provide any new information. It only signals that the motive isn't pure, that the motive is to improve one's reputation. So we found this pattern in a number of ways. In one study that I like in particular, we described a person who volunteered for a community service organization. And then in some cases, they subsequently posted on Facebook telling their social network that they had done this volunteering. Now, one thing we did in the study was we varied whether this individual was an investment banker or was a social worker. Now, investment bankers don't have the kindest, warmest reputation. In fact, they're perceived to be pretty selfish, whereas social workers are perceived to be generous, warm people. And so somewhat surprisingly, we found that bragging actually paid for the investment banker by providing new information. So when the investment banker brags, people learn that, in fact, he's a bit generous after all, whereas the social worker is already thought to be generous. And so bragging doesn't pay in the case of the social worker. Well, public displays of generosity are ubiquitous. Nearly every new building on a university campus, hospitals, and in the arts is emblazoned with the name of some illustrious donor who's signaling to the world just how generous they are. Now, these forms of boast are not just the purview of the super rich. In fact, if you look around on social media, you'll note just how pervasive bragging is. So people advertise or brag about their achievements, they brag about their relationships, and they brag about their good deeds. And so our research sheds some light on whether this is actually strategically smart, or in what cases it's strategically smart to brag. And what we find is that it makes sense to brag in the cases for which bragging provides new news about a person's character. If a person's reputation is already thought to be generous, then bragging fails to provide any benefit and only signals a potentially selfish motive. This research has other implications as well. So a reluctance to brag by some individuals may actually be a hindrance for fundraising. A very generous person may want to keep their donations and other good acts private so that they can signal to themselves that their motives are pure. However, we know that one of the best ways to fundraise is by telling other people of your own donations. When you tell a friend about your donations, that inspires them to donate as well. And so this really gets at the conflict between doing the most good possible and appearing the most good. So beyond studying how selfish motives are perceived by others, I also investigate how selfish incentives influence altruistic behavior. In a recent study, we asked people to make a pitch on video advocating for a cause that they care about. Now, after they agreed to do this, we gave some of them a financial incentive. We told them that for every $10 donated, based on somebody watching their video, we would also send them $10 in return. Other participants received no such incentive. And what we found was really informative. We found that donors gave less money on average when they viewed a video made by somebody who had received a financial incentive. And this is because even though they were unaware that the incentive exists, they can detect the sincerity, and the self-interest of an incentive taints the person's ability to convey sincerity in their pitch.